Good day, ladies and gentlemen. So, our discussion for today will be on differential calculus. So, we'll be focusing on certain aspects under differential calculus. So, I hope that the lesson becomes a successful one. So, primary discussion will be on. I divided the sections. So, the first part will be factorization of a cubic. So we'll be factorizing the cubic, and then the second part will be finding the first derivative from first principles. The third part will be how to sketch a cubic function, which has the form of y equal ax cubed plus bx squared plus cx plus d. And now the fourth part, I think, will be to find the equation of the cubic function when it is sketched. And then the last part will be interpreting the cubic function when it's sketched or when it's not sketched. But I want us to look at this point, which is the sketching of a cubic polynomial. We talk about important things there. We talk about the turning point, we talk about the x and y intercepts, and then we talk about the stationary point. So the stationary point is the same as the turning point. So this is a repetition. Excuse me for this. I wanted to put the point of inflection. So I will call it PI, the point of inflection, where the concavity of the function changes. If it was concave up, after point of inflection, it will be concave down. So, but we'll see this during the lesson. So the first part that I will be focusing on is the factorization of a cubic polynomial. So if let's say I'm in grade 11 and then I change math to to pure math in grade 12. I would watch my own videos because I'm going to be simple today to show you how to combat differential calculus in grade 12. So as I said, the first part will be factorizing a cubic polynomial. So now I have equation. So we're going to factorize two equations using this approach that I have. So the first equation will be f at x equal x cubed. So minus 9x squared plus 24x minus 16. So this will be the first cubic that we will factorize. Okay, just looking for my calculator. So I will write new certain points here on factorizing a cubic. So to get a cubic, you need to multiply two things. You need to multiply a quadratic and a linear equation. So now, if I'm saying to get a cubic, which is the highest power there, which is 3, you need to multiply a linear with a quadratic. I'm going to make an example. Suppose we have x plus 1 and then we have x squared plus 2x plus 6. No problem. So now I want you to look at this part. By foiling this thing, if you multiply x with x squared, you will get x cubed. So now my point is to get a cubic, you must have a straight line and a quadratic. You must have a binomial multiplied by trinomial. That's how you get a cubic. So this is binomial and it's also linear multiplied by trinomial and it's quadratic. So now I know I'm speaking in tongues, so you'll see the application when I factorize this thing. So I factorize this thing using a method. I forgot the name of the method, but it's a nice method. So now if you want to factorize a cubic polynomial, this will be very, very important, that to factorize a cubic, you need to multiply a binomial with a trinomial. So now if we want to factorize this cubic, we are going to have two brackets. The first bracket will know this one must contain a binomial, and then the second one must contain a trinomial. So now there's a factor that we use, a method that we use, which is called remainder theorem. So what remainder theorem says is that you need to substitute the values of x into the equation highlighted here, and we need the remainder of 0. If the remainder is 0, then that certain value is a factor to this equation. So now, which value are you going to substitute? I know people will be asking questions as they are going through this video. So now the values that will substitute are the factors of the last term. So now the factors of 16, two numbers that when you multiply, they give you 16. The first one, the first pair is 4 times 4. Now the second pair is 2 times 8. And then the third pair is 16 times 1. So now these are the factors of 16, two numbers that when you multiply, you get 16. So now I'm going to highlight here. You can substitute them as positive and negative, but substitute them where? Into the equation. So now I like starting with the smallest ones. So now if you look at our smallest factor is 1. So I am going to substitute 1 into this equation where I see x. So now here is my calculator. So I see there. So I can highlight on the side. I'm substituting the 1x equal 1. Let me put it here. X equal 1. So now if x equal 1, I want to know what is my f of x. So now this is 1, and I put them in brackets because I don't want mistake. So it's 1 minus 9 into 1 squared plus 24 into 1 minus 16. Remember, the goal is to get 0. Oh, first trial, 0. So now when x is 1, y is 0. Can see it there. So that means f of 1 is equal to 0. So now let's go ahead and substitute other factor 2. If 1 does not work, you can change the value of that one and then make it to be negative. So if you make it to be negative, you'll see what will happen. Let's see. So you see the answer is negative 50, and this is not 0. So what we say is x equal 1 is not a factor, or is not a solution. Not a factor, in fact, it's not a solution to this quadratic equation. So now f of 2, f of negative 1 equal negative 50. So this is not a factor because we have a remainder of negative 50. The goal is to get 0. So let's try 2. If you put 2, we want to see what we will get. So if you put 2, you get 4. So that means x is equal to 2 is not a solution. So now let's change the sign and see what we get. We get negative 108. So that means negative 2 is not a solution, or in simple terms, is not an x-intercept to that to this cubic function. So that's how we do it. You just search for any number, the one you find. Sometimes you find it in your first trial, because I found one in the first trial. So now if x is equal to 1, I want us to focus on this step. If x is equal to 1, it's a solution to our cubic function. So now I want you to go back. So we take this one to the other side. So we will have x minus 1 equal 0. So now This x minus 1, what is it? It is a binomial. So if x minus 1 equals 0 and x is a solution, we say therefore x minus 1 is a factor. So now if we say x minus 1 is a factor, so that means from our factorization, we know that we have f of x equal, remember we said to factorize a cubic, you need a linear or a binomial. And what is our binomial? It is x minus 1. And how did we get x minus 1? We took one step back, because this is the solution. Now, if you take the one step back, you will have x minus 1. So now x minus 1 is our first factor. So now for the second factor, we know this one is a trinomial. So now believe me, it's not difficult to predict what will be the first term here. So now if you go back to your cubic function, you notice that you have x cubed, and which is positive, you have x cubed. So now remember, to get this x cubed, you need to multiply the first term of the binomial with the first term of the trinomial. So now you see it's easy to predict what we will have here. So we will have x squared, because if you say x multiplied by x squared, what do we get? We get that x cubed there. So now we can do the same thing with the last term. The last term is negative 16. So now how will you get that negative 16? Obviously, you have to multiply the last terms. So last term of the binomial multiplied by the last term of the trinomial. So now, if this is negative 16, what number must be here as our last term? Thank you. The last term will be positive 16. Why? Because if we say negative 1 multiplied by positive 10, we get negative 16. Let me write this equation here so that we don't go up and down. So minus 9x squared plus 24x minus 16. So now here is the equation. So how do we get this 16? We just say negative 1 multiplied by positive 16. So now the thing is, we don't know the one that is in the middle, like here. We don't know that one that is in the middle. So we are going to set it to be bx. No problem, because we don't know the value of b, but we know that it must have x. So now how will we get that value of x? To get that value of x, you need to FOIL the whole thing. So now, but foiling is somewhat time, or it wastes time. So now what I want you to do, I want you to give me two terms that will give you x squared. I want you to give me two terms that will give you x squared. As you FOIL this thing, remember you are going to say x multiplied by x squared, that will give you x cubed. X multiplied by bx, that will give you bx squared. And I'm saying I want two terms that will give you x squared. So the first one, we find it here, that's going to be bx squared, because x times by bx, that's bx squared. So now, do we have another one? Yes, because x times by x squared, it's x cubed. X multiplied by bx, it's bx squared. We want this x squared here. So now x multiplied by 16, we don't get x squared, so we move. So negative 1 multiplied by x squared, we get negative x squared. And what did we say? We want x squared, so we have negative x squared equal to, you will always get 2x squared. You won't get 3, or you won't get 4. You will always get 2x squared. So now let's go back to our original equation. I want you to give me the x squared that you have in your original equation. So now if you go to your original equation, this is our x squared, the one with, we have that x squared there. So now bx squared minus x squared will be the one that we have in the equation. So we have equal to negative 9 x squared. So now what I want you to do is I want you to get rid of the x squared. You can factorize by x squared and then divide by it, or if you know the procedure, you divide everything by x squared. So this x squared, bx squared divided by x squared, you will have b minus 1, because x squared divided by x squared is 1. Don't make mistake and say it's 0. So equal to negative 9 x squared divided by x squared. The x squared will not cancel. The answer will be 1, and then we will have negative 9. So now to get b, now you have to transpose the negative 1. So if you take the negative 1 to the other side, you will have negative 9 plus 1. That will be negative 8. So now you have the value of b. So now the last part is to write the equation, the factorized equation. What was in our first bracket? Remember our first bracket? It was our factor here, which is x minus 1. So we have x minus 1. And then what do we have in the trinomial part? Remember, we have x squared as the first term, and then we have 16 as the last term, so plus 16. Now what about the term in the middle? We know that it must have x, so there's our x. But what is the value of b? The value of b is negative 8, and there it is. We have the value of b, so we'll have minus 8x plus 16. So now we have factorized our cubic polynomial. So now the second one that we will factorize is, let me find the page. The second one that we will factorize, I'll try to be fast because we somewhat saw the procedure. If you didn't see the procedure, you can view the video multiple times. So number 2, it will be fx equal x cubed minus 2x cubed minus 5x plus 6. So now remember the procedure. The first thing that we do, we look for the factors of 6. So what are the factors of 6? The factors of 6 are 3 times 2, and then we have 6 times 1. So now what are we going to do with those values? Remember, we consider them positive, negative, as long as we get 0. So now we're going to substitute them into the equation, and I want you to write the form. You remember, after factorizing this cubic here, you must have a small bracket that will contain the binomial, and then you'll have the big bracket that will contain the trinomial. So now we need to substitute those values in there. So let's start with 1. So 1 cubed minus 2 into, oh, I made a mistake. It was supposed to be squared. So it's 1 cubed minus 2 into 1 squared minus 5 into 1 plus 6. Oh, first trial. This will happen to you guys also. If you substitute it in your first trial, you get 0. So this is the 0 that we want. So now you can highlight that x equal 1. So now this is a solution. So now if you go one step back, you take 1 to the other side, you will get x minus 1. So what do you say about x minus 1? Is a factor. Why are we saying it's a factor? Because the value that we get here is 0. That's why we're saying it's a factor. So now in our factorization here, what will be in the first bracket? It will be x minus 1. And then we saw that we know x multiplied by whatever that is here, it must give us x cubed. So now think about what is here. It's going to be x squared. And then we go to the last one. So we have 6. So that means we have negative 1 multiplied by the last number there must give us 6. So what's going to be that last number? Thank you. It's going to be negative 6. And you know in the middle we have plus bx. So now how will you find that b? Remember, I need the terms that will give me x squared. Now x times by x squared, it's x cubed. We don't want x cubed. X times by bx giving us bx squared. Now the second x squared will be x multiplied by negative 6. That is x. We need x squared. So negative 1 times by x squared, that is negative x squared, equal. Remember, we equating it to whatever we have, x squared we have in the equation. So in this case, the x squared that we have in the equation is negative 2x squared. So now get rid of the x squared. We'll have b minus 1 equal negative 2. So therefore b will be negative 1. So now you'll take the negative 1